Hello there, and welcome to Infinity Beyond. I'm truly glad you've joined me tonight, or this afternoon, or perhaps even in the early hours of the morning, depending on where in the world you're listening from. If you feel like sharing, I'd absolutely love to know where you're tuning in and what time it is for you right now. Whether you're curled up in bed, winding down from a long day, or simply letting your mind float into quieter places, you're in the right space. Tonight, we'll embark on a slow, peaceful journey, not to the stars or deep oceans, but into the heart of something just as mysterious and ancient, the forest. At first glance, forests seem like serene, quiet places, filled with stillness. But don't be fooled by the calm. Beneath the bark and beneath our feet, an unseen world pulses with life. A world of communication, cooperation, and intelligence that might change how you see trees forever. Before we dive deep into this journey, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to Infinity Beyond. It helps more than you realize, and it lets us continue exploring these awe-inspiring topics with you. As we begin our walk through the forest, imagine the golden light filtering through a dense green canopy. Leaves flutter in the breeze, birds murmur above, and everything seems to move in slow motion. There's a kind of sacred hush here, not silence, but a living quiet. This is not a place of stillness, but of slow and steady collaboration. Trees are far more than what they seem. In fact, they're not simply individuals competing for sunlight, water, and soil. Recent scientific research is revealing a radical truth: that forests operate more like a community, even a society, where trees communicate, nurture, warn, and protect one another. The more we study them, the more we uncover a hidden world of connections, a network of roots, fungi, and signals that echo beneath the surface. Imagine you're pitching your tent in the middle of an ancient forest. Perhaps not the best spot, but let's say you find yourself among towering pines, wise old oaks, and slender birches. What you don't see is just as fascinating as what's above you. Below the ground lies something almost magical, a vast, intricate web formed by fungi. This network, often called the Wood Wide Web, links trees together, allowing them to communicate and share resources. These underground fungal networks are called mycorrhizae. The fungi form a symbiotic relationship with trees. They wrap around tree roots and extend far into the soil, drawing in water and nutrients. In return, the trees offer them sugars produced during photosynthesis. This mutual support creates a bond that has lasted for millions of years. But it doesn't stop there. Trees use this underground web to send warnings to each other. A tree attacked by pests might signal its neighbors through the fungal network, triggering them to produce defensive chemicals before the threat reaches them. It's as if trees are whispering urgent messages across the soil, helping each other stay safe. A tree thriving in a sunny spot might send excess nutrients to a younger tree struggling in the shade. This isn't just a hypothesis. Researchers have observed trees adjusting the flow of sugars and minerals through their roots and fungal partners, aiding their kin. In some forests, parent trees continue to feed their saplings long after they've stopped producing their own food, acting like guardians of the next generation. Scientists, for all their brilliance, are still catching up to this hidden world. We've long thought of forests as passive landscapes, backdrops for more dynamic life forms, like animals and humans. But now we're beginning to see forests as ancient, evolving superorganisms, with trees playing the role of neurons in a vast green brain. You may wonder, is this truly intelligence? Trees don't think like us. They don't have brains or nervous systems, but they perceive, they remember, they adapt, and they respond to their environment in remarkably complex ways. When a tree is damaged, it releases distress chemicals that travel through the air, sometimes for dozens of meters, to alert other plants. Some even change their leaf chemistry to become less appetizing to herbivores. Others call in reinforcements by releasing scents that attract predators of the attacking insect. It's not random, it's strategic. And these abilities aren't limited to one region. From the rainforests of the Amazon to the temperate woods of Europe and the ancient redwoods of North America, trees are doing this everywhere. It's not an anomaly, it's nature's design. So why are we only now beginning to understand this? Part of the reason is that the forest communicates in a language that is slow and subtle. Its rhythms unfold over seasons, not seconds. Its signals pulse through soil and sap, not silicon. And while we've been looking up, to the sky, to stars, the forest has been quietly weaving its wisdom beneath our feet. At Infinity Beyond, we often talk about space and time, about galaxies and black holes. But sometimes the deepest mysteries lie in the things we take most for granted, like the tree outside your window or the roots stretching beneath your home. There's a universe in the soil, and it's alive with stories waiting to be told. As we pause here in our journey tonight, take a moment to appreciate the quiet hum of the forest. Not silence, but a conversation in a frequency we've only just begun to understand. Ni? And pause, and roots. So next time you find yourself in a forest, pause for just a moment. Imagine the vast, invisible web stretching below you. A network not spun from silk, but woven from cells, carbon, and quiet cooperation. A living intelligence older than civilization, whispering its stories through the dark, cool soil. Quiet, constant, connected. And who knows, somewhere beneath your feet, a tree might be passing along a message. Maybe it's a simple hello, or maybe it's something deeper, a silent warning, a gentle reminder, or even an act of kindness. In the forest, no one truly stands alone. Let's linger a little longer in the shadows of this forest, where something remarkable is happening, something you'd never notice just with your eyes. There's no sound, no flickering lights, no shaking leaves or coded knocks on bark. And yet, right now, in this very moment, messages are zipping through the ground beneath us. Not at the speed of satellites or fiber optics, but at a glacial, deliberate pace. Slower than any Wi-Fi and yet profoundly effective. This is the Wood Wide Web. Yes, that's the actual term used by scientists. A poetic and surprisingly accurate name for the underground fungal network that links trees and plants together. Through this system, they share water, nutrients, and information, and even emotion-like reactions, like distress or care. This fungal web, made up of mycorrhizal fungi, acts as an intermediary. Picture it like the cable network of a forest internet. The fine tendrils of the fungi, known as hyphae, grow out from tree roots, sometimes connecting with multiple trees at once. It's like a group chat, only far more ancient and quiet. The fungi don't just carry messages passively. They profit from the arrangement too. In exchange for acting as couriers and nutrient miners, they receive sugars, food manufactured by the trees through photosynthesis. It's a win-win. This mutualism allows forests to become incredibly resilient ecosystems, capable of adapting and self-regulating in ways we've only begun to grasp. Let's imagine a scenario. Deep in the forest, one tree is being attacked by insects. It starts producing defensive chemicals to fight back. But it doesn't stop there. Through the Wood Wide Web, it transmits chemical signals to surrounding trees. These neighboring trees, upon receiving the alert, begin producing their own defense compounds, even before the attackers arrive. It's a kind of immune response, not for one organism, but for an entire community. More than that, large mother trees, usually old and deeply rooted, often act as central hubs in this network. They don't just passively share resources. They actively prioritize where nutrients go, sending extra help to saplings in distress or favoring their own genetic offspring. These ancient trees serve as mentors and guardians in the forest's silent society. This reshapes how we think of forests, no longer just collections of individuals, but deeply interwoven societies. We're moving from an image of competition to one of cooperation, not just survival of the fittest, but survival of the most connected. Even more astounding is the idea of memory. Some trees appear to remember past droughts, adjusting their growth accordingly during future dry spells. Others seem to learn from environmental stressors and even adapt the information passed along to nearby saplings. In this sense, forests may not just be alive, they may be learning entities. When we look at a forest now, we see towering trunks and green leaves, but the real activity, the real intelligence, lies hidden underground. And it doesn't follow our rules. The timescale is different. The signals are chemical. The responses are evolutionary. But make no mistake, it is happening. And perhaps the most humbling part? Trees and fungi have been doing this long before we arrived. This partnership goes back over 400 million years, older than dinosaurs, older than flowers, older than most of the land life we see today. At Infinity Beyond, we often explore the cosmos, but sometimes the most alien worlds are found right here on Earth. The forest floor beneath your feet might be the most sophisticated communication network you've never noticed. In a world so noisy and fast, the forest offers something rare: wisdom in stillness, cooperation in silence, and communication in complete invisibility. So the next time you step onto a hiking trail or rest beneath the shade of a tree, know that you're not alone. You're stepping into a living conversation, one that's been going on long before us, and will hopefully continue long after. Stay curious, stay connected, and remember, even silence can speak volumes. Cutting down the right tree in a forest isn't just about removing a plant. It can be like deleting an essential line of code in a vast program. Things stop working the way they should. A delicate balance is disrupted, and the network loses a crucial node. So the next time you stroll through the woods and spot a tree, take a moment. Imagine the hidden threads extending from it like a web of life. These threads are not just roots. They are conduits of information, nourishment, protection, and kinship. They stretch outward like veins, reaching from one trunk to another, underground and unseen. They carry not only water and nutrients, but also warnings and wisdom, ancient messages that have kept forests alive for millions of years. And while we may never hear these whispers with our ears, we can learn to listen in new ways, through science, curiosity, and a bit of wonder. And maybe, with just a little more reverence for the silent dialogues unfolding beneath our feet. Deep in the forest, you'll find giants, not the kind from myths or fairy tales, but real ones. Ancient trees that have stood for centuries, some even for 1,000 years. These titans tower above the rest, their roots anchoring the soil and their branches dancing in the winds of time. But their true majesty lies in how they care for their forest families. They're often called mother trees. These massive old trees are central figures in the underground network. Through the fungal web, they serve as hubs of communication and resource sharing. They don't dominate with force, they lead with nourishment. Scientists have found that these mother trees can recognize their own kin. Yes, they appear to know which saplings are genetically related to them. And remarkably, they preferentially send nutrients and carbon to those offspring, helping them survive in the understory where sunlight is scarce. It's as though they're raising their young in the dark, guiding them until they're strong enough to reach the light. But their care extends beyond family. In times of stress, droughts, disease, or insect invasion, mother trees share reserves with unrelated neighbors. A tree on the brink of death might still give away its last sugars to help others survive. These acts aren't just poetic. They've been observed and documented in multiple ecosystems. This altruism challenges traditional views of evolution. It's not just about individual survival anymore. In the forest, success is shared. Resilience is built through cooperation. It turns out that the strongest forests are the most connected ones. Let's imagine one of these giants standing in a misty grove, perhaps a Douglas fir or a beech tree. Its canopy stretches high above, absorbing sunlight and transforming it into life. But below, its roots are in constant dialogue, reaching out to younger trees, exchanging nutrients with fungi, signaling shifts in seasons or threats in the air. These trees are not only storytellers, they are caretakers, passing on memory through chemical signals and slow-growing patterns. The scars in their bark, the twists in their limbs, these are the records of battles and blessings that have shaped the forest over generations. At Infinity Beyond, we often speak of stars as ancient and wise, burning for billions of years. But here on Earth, these trees are our living elders. They embody time in a way that humbles us. They teach us that leadership doesn't mean taking more, it means giving more, nurturing more, and connecting more deeply. And when one of these forest elders falls, whether through age, storm, or saw, its role doesn't end. Even in decay, it gives life. Fallen trees become nurse logs, rich in nutrients, sheltering seeds and seedlings, feeding the soil, and giving countless organisms a chance to flourish. In death, as in life, they sustain the system. Incredibly, the remnants of these old trees can even remain part of the network. Their roots, still entangled with the fungal web, continue to transmit information and nutrients long after the tree's crown has collapsed. Ghost roots, echoing signals of care from trees no longer standing. This level of interconnectedness is not a metaphor. It's real, it's measurable, and it's critical to the survival of forests. So how does this change how we live? If we know that forests are not collections of individual trees, but communities of beings bound by relationships, then perhaps we must treat them differently. Forest management, conservation, and even urban planning must consider these invisible threads. Removing an old tree is not just removing biomass. It's unplugging a node from the network. It's breaking a connection that may have taken centuries to form. And it's silencing a voice in the chorus of the forest. At Infinity Beyond, we believe in listening to those silent voices, whether they echo from galaxies light years away or from root systems under our feet. Both carry wisdom. Both deserve wonder. So the next time you walk through a forest, whether it's a dense jungle, a boreal woodland, or a quiet park in your city, remember the mother trees. Remember the hidden giants and the network they hold together with invisible threads. These trees are not just scenery. They are the architects, caretakers, and memory keepers of Earth's oldest living communities. From the trunk of a towering elder to a struggling sapling in the shadows, a silent gift flows. Life. Think of that elder not merely as a tree, but as a guardian, a keeper of ancient wisdom, and a nurturing force watching over the entire forest. In a world that often feels divided, rushed, and disconnected, it's comforting to know that somewhere, in the quiet, nature still remembers how to care for its own. Step into the cool hush of a forest, and you might assume the only communication taking place is the rustling of leaves or the chirp of a squirrel in a distant branch. After all, trees don't talk. Or do they? Well, not in the way we do. They don't use sound waves or vocal cords. But as science is revealing, trees do communicate. They converse in ways that are subtle, clever, and remarkably effective. We've already explored their underground networks. But tonight we journey above the soil, where trees have another, more surprising method of talking. Yes, trees speak on the breeze. When a caterpillar or beetle begins munching on a tree's leaves, the tree doesn't just accept its fate. Instead, it sends out chemical distress signals, airborne messages that travel through the forest. These volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, can drift across dozens of meters, warning neighboring trees of the danger. Upon receiving this signal, nearby trees prepare for attack. They start producing defensive chemicals, compounds that make their leaves taste bad or even toxic to the invaders. It's a form of preemptive defense, a chemical warning system triggered by one tree but protecting many. Incredible, right? But it gets better. These chemical messages are not random, they're tailored. A tree being attacked by a specific insect will release a particular blend of VOCs designed to counter that insect's biology. It's a bit like sending an emergency broadcast with details specific to the threat. Attention, caterpillar attack. Deploy bitter-tasting compounds. Some trees go even further. They call for help. That's right, they summon reinforcements. The VOCs released can attract the natural enemies of the attacking insect. For example, if aphids are feasting on a tree, the tree might release a scent that attracts ladybugs, the aphids' predators. It's not just defense, it's strategy. This form of communication works across species too. Plants of entirely different kinds can respond to one another's VOCs. This interspecies eavesdropping turns forests into responsive, adaptive ecosystems where every plant is listening and talking in its own way. What's even more fascinating is that these signals are dynamic. A tree doesn't always respond the same way. Its response depends on the context, how much damage it's taken, how many neighbors are nearby, the time of year, and even previous experiences. Yes, trees have something akin to memory. If a tree has survived an insect attack before, it may react faster or stronger the next time it encounters the same threat. This isn't memory as we know it, but it's a biochemical learning process that improves the tree's chances of survival. A form of biological recall. Let's pause here. Take a deep breath. The air you just inhaled may contain more than oxygen and the scent of pine. It may carry messages, stories of attack, resistance, and survival, drifting invisibly between branches. The forest isn't just growing, it's thinking. Slowly, silently, strategically. And humans are only just beginning to understand this language. Scientists are now studying the specific compounds trees emit, how other plants interpret them, and what it means for agriculture, forestry, and climate science. At Infinity Beyond, we marvel at the stars, but the intelligence found in forests is no less cosmic. Here on Earth, trees offer a form of slow wisdom, a dialogue that spans days instead of minutes, but one that is no less real. Perhaps we were too busy to notice before. These discoveries don't just change how we view trees, they change how we view life. Intelligence may not require a brain. Communication doesn't need words, and defense doesn't need violence. The forest's language is cooperation and response, spoken through chemistry and connection. And what about city trees? Are they part of this network too? The answer is partly. Urban trees can still send chemical signals, but their connections are often disrupted. Limited space, concrete barriers, and fragmented root systems mean that city trees are often cut off from the forest internet. It's like being online with poor reception. They're still talking, but the network is weaker. That's why urban reforestation and green corridors are so important. They don't just bring beauty or shade, they restore relationships. They reconnect living beings in a web of support that benefits everything from soil microbes to human health. So what can we take from all this? We've spent centuries seeing trees as static, silent, and solitary. But the truth is far more vibrant. Trees are dynamic participants in a living, breathing, responsive ecosystem. They share, they defend, they remember, and above all, they communicate. So the next time you hear the wind rustling through leaves, ask yourself, what might the trees be saying? Listen closer. The forest is never truly silent. If trees are the voices of the forest, then fungi are its telephone lines, quiet, hidden, yet absolutely indispensable. These humble organisms, often overlooked and underestimated, lie at the very heart of everything that makes forests function. The towering cathedral of trees, swaying in the wind, may capture our eyes and our imagination, but without fungi, that cathedral would never stand. Or more precisely, it would never have existed to begin with. Let's return to our unsung heroes, the mycorrhizal fungi. These fascinating organisms belong to a vast and diverse group of soil-dwelling fungi. Their gift? Forming deeply intimate partnerships with the roots of plants, a connection so vital that nearly 90% of all land plants rely on it. It's a relationship built on trade and trust, refined over hundreds of millions of years. The deal is simple. Fungi receive sugars, the carbohydrates produced by trees through photosynthesis. In return, they extend their filamentous structures, called hyphae, out into the soil. These threads explore far beyond the reach of a tree's own roots, unlocking access to water, phosphorus, nitrogen, and other essential minerals. But fungi do much more than simply deliver nutrients. They are the forest's translators, brokers, and messengers. They manage information flow, mediate relationships, and support biodiversity in ways we're only beginning to understand. There are two major types of mycorrhizal fungi: ectomycorrhizal and arbuscular mycorrhizal. Ectomycorrhizal fungi wrap around the outside of tree roots like a glove. They form a sheath that facilitates rapid exchange of water and nutrients. These are most often found in temperate and boreal forests. Think pines, oaks, and beeches. Arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, on the other hand, actually penetrate the root cells, forming tree-like structures known as arbuscules. These fungi are more common in grasslands and tropical forests, and are essential to the survival of many herbaceous plants. These fungi act like universal plugins, adapting their function based on the species they're connected to. They help stabilize ecosystems, increase drought resistance, and even improve disease tolerance among plant communities. Imagine a forest under stress, perhaps a period of drought. Mycorrhizal fungi step in, transferring water and nutrients from trees with surplus to those in need. When a sapling struggles in the shade, its fungal partner may help it survive until sunlight becomes available. These acts of generosity aren't driven by emotion, but by a system built on interdependence and balance. It's not just plants that benefit either. Fungi enhance soil structure by binding particles together, creating air pockets and improving drainage. This promotes microbial diversity, which in turn contributes to carbon sequestration, storing carbon in soil for long periods. So while we often hear about rainforests as carbon sinks, it's the fungal networks beneath them doing a major part of the work. Fungi also help plants communicate through the underground web, transmitting signals of insect attacks, heavy metals in the soil, or environmental changes. In some cases, the fungal network seems to moderate these messages, amplifying urgent alerts and filtering out noise, like a biological algorithm tuned for survival. And yes, they can be selective. Research suggests that fungi sometimes prioritize relationships with certain trees, especially those that offer more sugars. In this sense, they are not only helpers, but shrewd traders, optimizing their role in a living economy where energy is currency and balance is law. At Infinity Beyond, we often marvel at galaxies and gravitational waves, at the unseen forces that shape the cosmos. But here on Earth, fungi are our microscopic equivalents, shaping life from the shadows, conducting a silent symphony that makes all other life possible. Yet for all their brilliance, these networks are fragile. Soil degradation, deforestation, monoculture farming, and pollution can destroy fungal networks in ways that are difficult to reverse. And once the web is broken, Trees lose not just their nutrients, but their ability to communicate and coordinate. An invisible intelligence is lost. But there's hope. Ecologists are learning how to reintroduce mycorrhizal fungi into damaged ecosystems. Forest restoration now includes not just planting trees, but inoculating soils with beneficial fungi. It's a rebirth of the underground, a quiet revolution in conservation science. So what can we do as everyday explorers? Support forests, of course, but more than that, support soil. Avoid synthetic fertilizers that harm fungal life. Choose regenerative agriculture when possible, and simply spread awareness that beneath every step in a forest lies a vast, living internet, billions of years in the making. Because in the end, the forest doesn't just grow. It networks, it connects, and it thrives through relationships invisible to our eyes but essential to our survival. So next time you walk beneath a canopy of trees, pause and reflect. There, just beneath the soles of your shoes, is a civilization more ancient than any human city. One built not with stone or steel, but with threads of connection, pulses of cooperation, and quiet, patient wisdom. Forests often appear serene, places of quiet cooperation where trees share nutrients, fungi act as messengers and brokers, and warnings glide silently through the soil and air like leafy telegrams. It's a beautiful vision of unity and harmony, a natural symphony of gentle symbiosis. But let's not get too romantic, because while nature is generous, she also knows how to compete. Beneath all the friendly exchanges and nurturing roots, there is a constant push and pull, a tug-of-war of survival and strategy. Trees are not just neighbors, they are rivals. Rivals for sunlight, for space, for nutrients, for water. Cooperation exists, yes, and we've explored its magic, but it's balanced by an equally powerful force: competition. Sometimes the forest doesn't whisper, it jostles. Let's start with the most obvious resource: light. Sunlight is the lifeblood of trees. Through photosynthesis, trees convert sunlight into sugars, their energy source, and also the currency they use to trade with fungi. But in a forest where the canopy forms a dense green ceiling, light is a rare and precious commodity. Up there, it's a race to the top. This competition begins at birth. Saplings stretch desperately for light, growing tall and thin, often leaning or twisting in bizarre angles just to catch a few extra rays. If they're too slow, they're shaded out by taller neighbors. And without light, they wither. In some forests, over 90% of saplings will die in the shadows. It's a brutal start. Even established trees fight for dominance. Some species grow faster than others, deliberately outpacing slower-growing neighbors to steal their light. In tropical rainforests, trees develop massive leaves and flexible trunks just to snake their way into sunlit gaps. And it doesn't stop at sunlight. Below the ground, another war is waging for water and minerals. Tree roots spread far and wide, often overlapping and competing with one another. While the fungal network may promote sharing, root systems often compete fiercely, secreting chemicals into the soil to block competitors or absorb nutrients more efficiently. This strategy even has a name: allelopathy. Some trees, like black walnuts, release compounds that inhibit the growth of nearby plants. It's not passive aggression. It's ecological chess, a way to limit competition, control territory, and secure resources for one's own offspring. Even fungi, which we often portray as the selfless connectors of the forest, are selective. They may channel nutrients preferentially to trees that supply them with the most sugars. In other words, if you don't pay up, you don't get the goods. These microscopic middlemen are pragmatic partners, not unconditional givers. And then there's reproduction. Trees may share water, but they do not share pollinators. Species evolve elaborate strategies, from colorful flowers to intoxicating scents, to lure insects, birds, or wind to themselves. The forest becomes a stage of evolutionary advertising, with each plant trying to outshine its competitors. Even the timing of seed dispersal is strategic. Some trees drop seeds early to avoid competition. Others wait for fires, storms, or even animal digestion to activate their growth. Each is trying to carve out a niche, a tiny chance at survival in a crowded world. At Infinity Beyond, we celebrate the awe-inspiring cooperation within ecosystems. But we also recognize the dynamic tension that makes nature so complex. Harmony is not the absence of conflict. It's the result of balance, a never-ending dance between sharing and striving, peace and pursuit. This balance is critical. Without competition, species might grow lazy, over-reliant on partnerships. Without cooperation, forests would fragment, turning into chaotic, disconnected landscapes. But the fusion of both, mutualism and rivalry, creates resilience. And here's the twist. Competition often fuels innovation. Trees under pressure grow stronger roots. They develop smarter seed strategies. They adapt to harsh soil or shifting climate. And in doing so, they teach us an essential truth, that survival doesn't mean crushing others. It means growing smarter, adapting better, and finding the balance between giving and guarding. In fact, recent research shows that some forests maintain dynamic equilibrium, shifting patterns of competition and cooperation based on seasons, stress, and species density. Trees that compete in the spring may share in the drought of summer. It's a flexible system, one that prioritizes survival above ideology. So the next time you walk through a dense woodland and admire its beauty, remember that beneath that beauty lies a wild energy. Every tree is part of a living drama, seeking light, avoiding shade, claiming ground, and sharing just enough to keep the system intact. Nature doesn't pick sides. She creates systems that work. And as we face our own challenges, from climate change to food scarcity, perhaps we can learn from forests not just how to grow, but how to balance. How to be generous, yet resilient. Competitive, yet connected. Because in the end, forests don't just survive, they evolve. Through quiet conversations, strategic rivalries, and unshakable roots. We usually reserve the word intelligence for beings with brains. Humans, dolphins, maybe even octopuses. But in recent years, that definition has started to change. A quiet revolution is taking place in biology, and its roots are, quite literally, in the forest. Many scientists now refer to a surprising concept, plant intelligence. Not because trees are conscious in the way animals or humans are, but because they demonstrate behaviors that suggest perception, memory, adaptation, and even decision-making, all without a single neuron. Let's begin with perception. Trees may not have eyes, ears, or skin, but they are constantly sensing the world around them. Through specialized proteins and cellular receptors, they detect subtle shifts in light, temperature, humidity, gravity, soil nutrients, and even airborne chemicals released by neighboring plants. In fact, a tree can know which direction the sun is in, how dry the ground has become, whether it's under threat, or whether a neighbor is being chewed on by a hungry insect. That's right, a tree can sense if its neighbor has been attacked, and it will react accordingly. This awareness gives trees an astonishing ability to adapt. For example, if a young sapling realizes it's in the shadow of a larger tree, it may adjust its growth pattern, not randomly, but deliberately, elongating its trunk more rapidly, redirecting branches toward a light gap, or pausing lateral growth to conserve resources. That's not passive growth, it's reactive growth. Growth with strategy. This brings us to memory. Yes, trees seem to remember. Not like we do, of course. There's no hippocampus in the trunk. But on a cellular level, trees can record past experiences and change their behavior based on them. A tree that has endured a drought may respond more quickly the next time water becomes scarce, closing its stomata sooner to conserve moisture. This isn't just physiological, it's learned resilience. In some experiments, researchers found that trees primed by stress in earlier years showed better responses in future seasons. They were more efficient at producing defensive compounds, faster to react to shade, and even more cooperative with fungal partners. It's a kind of biological conditioning, a forest wisdom coded in cellulose. Let's consider decision-making. Trees have a finite amount of energy, and they must allocate it wisely. Should it go toward growing new leaves? Sending sugars to the roots? Investing in seeds for reproduction? Defending against pests? Or strengthening their fungal connections? These aren't random choices. Trees prioritize, sequence, and sometimes delay actions based on both internal needs and external cues. This ability to make adaptive trade-offs is a hallmark of intelligence, even in its most primitive form. One remarkable study showed that pea plants, not even trees, could predict where light would appear in a Y-shaped maze, choosing the path where they had previously encountered light. With no brain, no nerves, just pure responsive biology. Now scale that up to a 100-foot Douglas fir, and you begin to understand how complex the mind of a forest might truly be. Even reproduction in trees is filled with strategic timing. Some species engage in massed seeding, where all trees in a region release their seeds in a single burst every few years. This overwhelms predators and ensures more seeds survive. But what's fascinating is how trees know to synchronize. It seems to be a combination of stored energy, environmental cues, and, possibly, chemical communication. It's not conscious in the human sense, but it's definitely not random. At Infinity Beyond, we celebrate the strange and wonderful boundaries between science and wonder, and this is one of them. Tree intelligence blurs the line between biology and what we might call behavior. It asks us to rethink life, not as a hierarchy with humans at the top, but as a web of living, learning systems, each operating on its own timescale. Of course, the idea of intelligent plants was once dismissed as pseudoscience. Early researchers in the 1970s who proposed it were often ridiculed. But modern molecular biology, combined with advances in ecology and neuroscience, is painting a more nuanced picture. No, trees don't think. But yes, they do respond, remember, plan, and adapt. And that's a kind of thinking, just not the kind we're used to. There's something deeply humbling in this idea. While we build supercomputers and AI, forests have been running slow, organic algorithms for hundreds of millions of years. They adapt without urgency. They learn without lectures. They coordinate without meetings. And they do it in a way that sustains entire ecosystems, and ultimately, us. So the next time you're near a tree, pause. Gently press your hand to its bark. Realize that you are in the presence of a being that senses you, even if you can't perceive it. A being that has seen droughts, storms, and fires, and survived. A being that is part of a community, rooted in memory and awareness, reaching for the light in more ways than one. Long before forests blanketed the continents, long before even the first dinosaurs stirred in the undergrowth, life on Earth was ruled by the oceans. The earliest life forms, simple algae, bacteria, and tiny marine organisms, thrived in the protective embrace of water. But around 500 million years ago, something extraordinary began to unfold. At the edges of these ancient seas, a few brave pioneers crept toward land. These weren't trees, flowers, or even ferns. They were primitive, leafless plants, small and humble, resembling moss or liverwort more than anything we see today. They had no roots, no stems, and certainly no wood. On their own, their chances of surviving the brutal conditions of early Earth were slim. Why? Because the land was harsh and unforgiving. The soil, what little of it there was mostly raw, undecomposed rock. Essential nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen were locked away, inaccessible without tools. Rainwater came and went, with no plant roots to soak it up. And worst of all, there was no protective ozone layer. Ultraviolet radiation blasted the land with relentless intensity. So how did life on land begin? Enter the fungi. Fungi had already been thriving on dry land for millions of years. Unlike plants, they didn't need sunlight to survive. They broke down rock, formed partnerships with bacteria, and wove themselves into the soil using fine filamentous threads known as hyphae. These early fungal networks were like nature's first explorers, mapping, dissolving, and transforming Earth's crust. When the first land plants arrived, the fungi were ready. And what happened next was one of the most important partnerships in the history of life on Earth. Fungi offered the plants something invaluable: access. They tapped into water, minerals, especially phosphorus, and transferred these essentials directly into the cells of the plants. In exchange, the plants offered something fungi couldn't produce on their own: sugars made through photosynthesis. It was a deal struck in silence, in the shadows of time, but it changed everything. This alliance, known as the mycorrhizal relationship, gave early plants the boost they needed to colonize land. They could now grow taller, spread wider, and survive droughts. Over time, they evolved roots, leaves, and vascular systems. They became ferns, then trees, then vast forests, and with them came insects, animals, and eventually us. Without fungi, there would be no forests, no flowers, no food chains, no humans. Let that sink in. The lush green world we live in today, the one that provides oxygen, food, shelter, and shade, began with a collaboration between two of life's earliest forms, plant and fungus. What's even more incredible is that this partnership didn't stop in the past. It's still happening right now, under your feet. Over 90% of land plants today still form mycorrhizal relationships. That includes towering redwoods, flowering plants, grasses, and even the crops that feed our species. These fungi live in and around the roots, extending their hyphae into the soil like microscopic fishing lines, absorbing nutrients, retaining moisture, and transferring information. At Infinity Beyond, we love exploring the cosmos and unraveling the mysteries of galaxies and black holes. But this is a mystery that unfolded right here on Earth, a biological story so ancient and profound it could rival any cosmic origin. Let's break this down with a bit more precision. These early fungi, likely from the group called Glomeromycota, were masters of survival. They could thrive in low-nutrient environments and formed arbuscular mycorrhizae, which penetrated plant root cells and created intricate exchange systems. In fact, scientists have discovered fossil evidence of these partnerships dating back over 400 million years. These fossilized root impressions show fungal structures inside, a silent testimony to the world's first underground economy. And it wasn't just nutrients being traded. Recent research suggests that even ancient fungi may have played a role in regulating water flow, protecting plants from pathogens, and helping them adapt to the wildly fluctuating conditions of primitive Earth. In short, fungi weren't just helpful, they were essential. Today, these ancient partnerships have evolved into complex ecosystems. Forests are built upon this alliance. Coral reefs have their own symbiotic arrangements, and even humans have borrowed the idea, using fungal relationships to improve agriculture through mycorrhizal inoculation of soils. So the next time you look at a blade of grass, a flower, or a tree, remember that beneath it lies a story billions of years old. a story not of conquest, but of collaboration. The land wasn't conquered by plants. It was co-inhabited, co-developed, co-evolved through a silent handshake of sugars and minerals. A handshake we're only beginning to truly understand. And perhaps, as we face our own future on this planet, we should take a lesson from this ancient alliance. Survival doesn't always come from being the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes it comes from forming the right partnerships. Cutting down a tree might seem like a simple act. One trunk removed, one shadow gone, one space cleared. But in the complex world of the forest, the impact is far deeper than what the eye can see. When you remove a tree, especially an old one, you're not just subtracting a piece of wood from the landscape. You're erasing a hub in a living network. You're silencing a voice in the underground conversation. In fact, you might be removing a mother tree, an elder in the forest's underground social system. And with that comes profound consequences. As we've learned throughout this journey, mother trees are more than just tall, old organisms. They are information centers, resource banks, and guardians of regeneration. Their roots are deeply connected to the microcosm of younger trees around them, often intertwined through the mycorrhizal fungal network we explored in previous episodes. When one of these giants is cut down, it doesn't merely vanish. It leaves a void, a kind of silence in the soil. Nearby saplings may suddenly lose their strongest source of carbon, water, or mineral nutrients. Trees that once relied on warning signals or guidance from the elder are now isolated. The communication lines, carefully maintained through seasons of growth and stress, are broken. The forest's resilience to stress begins to fray. Think of it like removing a keystone from an arch. The rest of the stones might stand for a time, but the entire structure becomes fragile. One strong wind, one long drought, one insect outbreak, and everything begins to collapse. Modern forestry has started to recognize this. A method known as retention forestry is emerging in many regions, especially in Europe and North America. It's based on the principle of leaving some mother trees behind during logging operations. These trees help maintain the underground network, support the next generation, and preserve biodiversity. Retention forestry doesn't just protect soil structure, it protects memory. Yes, memory. Because forests are not just physical spaces, they are biological archives. The DNA in their roots, the chemical signals in their mycorrhizal networks, these hold the wisdom of generations. When we cut all trees indiscriminately, we erase that archive. Some researchers have even found that forests with intact mother tree networks recover more quickly after wildfires or human disturbance. Their root systems stabilize the soil. Their fungal partners re-establish connections. Their presence fosters a return to equilibrium far faster than in completely cleared areas. This knowledge is changing how we define sustainability. Sustainable forestry isn't just about planting new trees after cutting old ones. It's about maintaining the social structure of the forest. Trees grow, but relationships, true, deep ecological relationships, take decades or centuries to form. And then there's the emotional side, because forests aren't just science. They are stories. They are sacred to cultures around the world. From indigenous communities in Canada to rainforest dwellers in the Amazon, trees are seen as ancestors, spirits, teachers, and science now supports what these traditions have long held true, that forests are communities, not commodities. So what can you and I do? Support rewilding projects that reintroduce native species and leave legacy trees untouched. Advocate for smarter forestry regulations that prioritize retention and biodiversity over profit. Choose wood and paper products from certified sustainable sources that respect ecological networks. Plant native trees. And when possible, plant them in clusters to mimic community formation. Educate others. Share what you've learned about mother trees, fungal networks, and plant communication. At Infinity Beyond, we're passionate about uncovering not just the stars above, but the worlds within. And the forest is one of the most intricate, inspiring worlds we've explored yet. It's a world where silence speaks, where roots remember, and where every tree, no matter how small, plays a role in something far larger. So the next time you see a towering tree, pause. Recognize that you're not just looking at a plant. You're standing in the presence of a network node, a mentor, and a memory keeper. And if that tree falls, the echo won't just be heard in sound, it will be felt in the soil, in the seedlings, in the songs of birds, and in the stories of science and spirit alike. Cutting down a tree might seem like a simple act. One trunk removed, one shadow gone, one space cleared. But in the complex world of the forest, the impact is far deeper than what the eye can see. When you remove a tree, especially an old one, you're not just subtracting a piece of wood from the landscape. You're erasing a hub in a living network. You're silencing a voice in the underground conversation. In fact, you might be removing a mother tree, an elder in the forest's underground social system. And with that comes profound consequences. As we've learned throughout this journey, mother trees are more than just tall, old organisms. They are information centers, resource banks, and guardians of regeneration. Their roots are deeply connected to the microcosm of younger trees around them, often intertwined through the mycorrhizal fungal network we explored in previous episodes. When one of these giants is cut down, it doesn't merely vanish. It leaves a void, a kind of silence in the soil. Nearby saplings may suddenly lose their strongest source of carbon, water, or mineral nutrients. Trees that once relied on warning signals or guidance from the elder are now isolated. The communication lines, carefully maintained through seasons of growth and stress, are broken. The forest's resilience to stress begins to fray. Think of it like removing a keystone from an arch. The rest of the stones might stand for a time, but the entire structure becomes fragile. One strong wind, one long drought, one insect outbreak, and everything begins to collapse. Modern forestry has started to recognize this. A method known as retention forestry is emerging in many regions, especially in Europe and North America. It's based on the principle of leaving some mother trees behind during logging operations. These trees help maintain the underground network, support the next generation, and preserve biodiversity. Retention forestry doesn't just protect soil structure, it protects memory. Yes, memory. Because forests are not just physical spaces, they are biological archives. The DNA in their roots, the chemical signals in their mycorrhizal networks, these hold the wisdom of generations. When we cut all trees indiscriminately, we erase that archive. Some researchers have even found that forests with intact mother tree networks recover more quickly after wildfires or human disturbance. Their root systems stabilize the soil. Their fungal partners re-establish connections. Their presence fosters a return to equilibrium far faster than in completely cleared areas. This knowledge is changing how we define sustainability. Sustainable forestry isn't just about planting new trees after cutting old ones. It's about maintaining the social structure of the forest. Trees grow, but relationships, true, deep ecological relationships, take decades or centuries to form. And then there's the emotional side, because forests aren't just science. They are stories. They are sacred to cultures around the world. From indigenous communities in Canada to rainforest dwellers in the Amazon, trees are seen as ancestors, spirits, teachers, and science now supports what these traditions have long held true, that forests are communities, not commodities. So what can you and I do? Support rewilding projects that reintroduce native species and leave legacy trees untouched. Advocate for smarter forestry regulations that prioritize retention and biodiversity over profit. Choose wood and paper products from certified sustainable sources that respect ecological networks. Plant native trees. And when possible, plant them in clusters to mimic community formation. Educate others. Share what you've learned about mother trees, fungal networks, and plant communication. At Infinity Beyond, we're passionate about uncovering not just the stars above, but the worlds within. And the forest is one of the most intricate, inspiring worlds we've explored yet. It's a world where silence speaks, where roots remember, and where every tree, no matter how small, plays a role in something far larger. So the next time you see a towering tree, pause. Recognize that you're not just looking at a plant. You're standing in the presence of a network node, a mentor, and a memory keeper. And if that tree falls, the echo won't just be heard in sound, it will be felt in the soil, in the seedlings, in the songs of birds, and in the stories of science and spirit alike.